Is this the biggest game of the weekend? Because I kind of think it is.
I mean, England v New Zealand.
England v New Zealand is huge.
Yeah, in the grand context of that's the Division 1 game, isn't it? But this has the longest term implications, I suppose. Because this is essentially a straight shootout for that second tiering of the Rugby World Cup of 2027. Yeah.
So the World Cup draw is being done on the 3rd of December. That is getting pretty close. They will take the seedings from the end of this autumn period, from the 1st of December onwards. And if Wales and Japan are currently ranked 13th and 12th, Japan are in 13th, Wales are in 12th, the winner of this game will be in 12th. There are going to be 6 pools in the 2027 World Cup. So that means that each band has 6 teams in it. Yeah. So the top 6 will go through as top seeds, the next 6 will go through as second seeds, and then the 6 after that as third seeds, and 6 after that as...
So we're looking at 12th versus 13th here, and essentially, whoever loses this game would need to spring a massive upset in the remainder of their autumn campaign.
Yes.
i.e. if Wales lose, they'll have to beat either the Springboks or the All Blacks, which isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So it is essentially a World Cup knockout game in a way.
Yeah, so Wales, if they beat South Africa or New Zealand, they can still sneak in. That is highly unlikely. Japan are playing Georgia, which would not be worth enough ranking points to overtake Wales based on their remaining fixtures, because Wales won't lose that many points because South Africa and New Zealand rank so much higher than them. If Japan beat Georgia 100-0, they won't gain enough ranking points to overtake Wales, even if they lose their games 100-0. So for Japan, this is absolute do or die. Yeah. For Wales, this is 99% do or die. They've got a small chance if they beat the All Blacks or Springboks, they can save themselves. Because if you drop down to that 3rd tier, right? Hypothetically, it is possible that Wales or Japan could end up, whoever loses this game, in a group that is the Springboks, France, themselves, and then Tonga, you know? That is possible as a group. Yeah. That you could end up with, and you likely will, 2 Tier 1 nations in your side, and that means your chance of getting out even to the round of 16 becomes extremely short.
And even then, some of the 4th-banded teams, you mentioned Tonga there, Samoa haven't qualified yet.
Yeah.
These teams who actually would pose more of a threat than necessarily teams that are better than them, because they're experienced, that... when Samoa or Tonga can rock up to a game against Wales, they've done it before. Yeah. They've beaten them before. They know that they can compete with these. History is on their side, and they probably stand more of a chance than potentially a Hong Kong or a Zimbabwe or a Chile, whoever. So it's a really scary prospect as Welsh fans.
Look at Wales women, right? Yeah. They had a drop in form right before the World Cup banding was done. They ended up as 3rd seed, and then inevitably ended up losing to Fiji, the one band underneath them, because they lost the first 2 games. Yeah. And because they kind of fell apart over those first 2 games. No momentum, no confidence. Well. And there's a chance Wales men could end up in the same fate as the women. Yeah. And what a shit world that would be as a Welsh fan. Yeah. However, Japan, likewise, do not want to be in that situation.
I will add as well, so interestingly, I spoke to a couple of mates who were England fans at the rugby club last night, who were saying that I'd quite like Wales to win that game because I'd rather be put in a group with Japan than Wales in 2 years' time, as English fans, because their logic was, I think Wales will improve more in the next 2 years than necessarily Japan will, which I think is an interesting thread of logic, but it's quite unpredictable to know how Wales will go in the next 2 years because there's so much that can change and that will change in the next couple of years.
There is more chance... I think it's more likely that Wales go on to be a competitive team in 2 years' time than Japan. But I also think it's more likely that Japan, suddenly something strikes and they win the World Cup.
Yeah, I get that.
They have some strike of inspiration. I think that's possible. I refuse to rule that out because this Japan team are really interesting. I think they are a bit of a mess, but a really interesting mess. Yeah. They're a mess I'm fascinated by. Yeah. Because they are trying to play a style of rugby that no one has ever played before.
They're deliberately a mess.
Yeah.
They're playing at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so many people who've played rugby before will have that voice of somebody in the team who says, right, lads, we need to slow it down for one phase so then we can then speed it back up. Nuh-uh. Eddie Jones does not speak that language. Yeah. He has Naoto Saito in the middle of things, just speeding things up. I mentioned on the video of Japan versus Ireland that sometimes his legs and his arms move faster than his brain.
Yeah.
that he will just chuck the ball or kick the ball to wherever there is space, even if, or wherever he perceives there could be space, regardless of whether it's a good option or any of his team know that's going to happen or think if it's a good idea.
Yeah, and this is the thing about Japan, is they play so fast. Eddie Jones is branding this Chizoku rugby, which is kind of like an anime manga word for going at super speed, for that being a superpower, and he wants them to play that way. He wants to play at the speed where no one can live with them. Yeah, and this is the growing theme of them, is that basically they really are excellent for half an hour and then start to choke a little bit, start to run out of steam themselves. And it is almost impossible to condition a team to play for 80 minutes at the speed they want to. Especially when, as we talked about in the Ireland video a few days ago, you have to defend as well. You have to actually make tackles and get off the ground. And that is the most tiring thing in rugby, right? That is more exhausting than attacking, mentally as much as anything else. And that will tire teams out. And we are seeing Wales start to develop how they want to play. And we saw little bits of it with Matt Sherritt. And Steve Tandy, I thought, was really interesting. He talked about this. He said that, we'd ran a bunch of Matt Sherritt's attack already in the summer. And so when he was in charge, a part of why he brought him in was he wanted some consistency, he wanted some continuity. So he said, we knew that the attack would be the thing that functioned best because that was the thing the players had the most time with and were most used to. So we have to put focus on that whilst we introduce other elements slowly and build those up. And I think that's quite a smart way of going about rebuilding this team.
Yeah.
So he was saying that there were a lot of areas we just hadn't had time to focus on. And we'd kind of gone okay, let's try and get a few areas up and running properly. And yet we saw that match share attack, right? A lot of ball in hand in the 22, varying the forward runners a lot more than Wales were in past, which is the thing I found really pleasing about that Argentina performance, was them bringing extra runs onto the ball and having deception there. And you look to exhaust those players, and you look to make them make a lot of tackles in the Japan team to slow them down the road.
Yeah, we theorised in that video in the Ireland game, and in past generally across the Eddie Jones era of Japan, that he is trying to get them to... I use the word manifest. He's trying to manifest this brand of rugby, which at the moment is kind of burning them out, and it isn't the most sustainable right now. But with the theory that he's looking to the future, he's looking ahead to 2027, and how good can they be at this if they're conditioned in this way for 2 years until their bodies just go, yeah, okay, we can live with this. We've been doing this for ages. Do you think there is any chance that Eddie Jones, because this has got so much on the line, because it's a knockout game essentially, he changes it just for this week?
I don't think he will. No. I think he's proud enough.
Yeah.
I think obviously he's a guy who thinks World Cup first.
Yeah.
And so this is the most important game for Japan of this 4-year cycle. And yet, I think he genuinely views this as the most important way to play. And I think there's a chance they kick more than they have.
Yeah.
They've played an awful lot of almost breaking eggs in order to make an omelette. And every now and then a bit of shell in there, and they haven't kicked the ball. I think they might still play this way, but kick more of the ball and try and engage Wales a little bit in that battle and try and win some territory alongside.
I think it's quite interesting. I think if we were talking about Rassi Erasmus, Joe Schmidt, Andy Farrell, John Mitchell, any of these top-tier coaches, I would have said, I think they're going to change the way they play just for this week. But I think you're right. I think Eddie's too much of a dickhead to do that.
He's too proud.
Yeah.
He genuinely believes his shit is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
You look at his England team. You look at, he said recently, I didn't coach well that year for Australia because I tried to make them do too much in a year.
Yeah.
And, that was true. But he genuinely believed positions rugby was the future and was going to win a World Cup. And so he went I think this can win a World Cup.
I'm going to teach it in 6 months.
Yeah, I'm going to teach it in 6 months, what I've been trying to do with England for 3 years.
Sorry, Wally.
And but again, when he has an idea and he sees this as where the game is going, he will stick to it.
Yeah.
He will completely commit to that idea. And whether he's right or wrong doesn't really matter. The thing is, he is right more often than he's wrong. It's just that sometimes, I don't know, happened with England, right? It's now everyone runs that system. But it didn't lead to England winning World Cup. Yeah. Partly because he got fired, partly because it wasn't really working with the players he had available, and he was having to tweak and twist it a bit. And did the players buy in the same way? I don't know, but now everyone runs it.
So if we pretend for, let's say, 10 minutes, we're biased Japanese fans, and we're going to tell the audience why Japan are going to win this game. Okay, what are their strengths? What we're talking about. The number one you mentioned there. The kicking game, that you think they're gonna bring that in a little bit more. We're gonna see. Saito likes that long chip over the top, the kind of end over end box kick. He's less of a contestable kicker himself than a lot of scrum halves in the world. And they've got Sheng Chun Lee at number 10, fly half, who has been really good. He's improved his kicking game quite a lot. I imagine he will look to go for that occasional crossfield bomb. It's not his favourite kind of kick, but I think that's something they might try, because Wales in the last game against Argentina were dreadful aerially.
Yes. So this is a big issue with Wales, is Blair Murray at fullback is not very good under the high ball. He is short, and he is not great at getting up, like jump height-wise, and then just composure under the high ball, right? He just isn't naturally winning those. Against Japan in the summer, the first test, he won 2 of 7 high balls. Second test, 3 of 6. Japan did put more high balls in him than they have in pretty much any other game this year.
It's not their natural game.
Yeah. They'd seen him against England really struggle against Tom Roebuck, and we can probably get Ishida and so on against him and see if they can win some ball back in the air. And the odds are about 50-50. It's about 50-50 whether he wins the ball back there. Against Argentina last week, it was 1 of 8 on him. Matt Shope brought up the stat that they were 3 of 15 overall, 3 of 13 rather, overall against Argentina in the air on contestable bombs.
Which is crazy.
Which is terrible,
Yeah.
which is really bad. Matt Shope made an interesting point. He said this in the press conference, and it made me realise, like, oh God, they're going to put Blair Murray again. And then sure enough, he is in the team. He said, we need to be doing more to protect him. And I think that is
You're
true.
not allowed to anymore.
But the thing is, Wales can do more to protect him in terms of putting more runners in the line. They've got to run around and so on.
Yeah, that's true.
There's little bits you can do. But blocking is not allowed anymore. That law changed. So either we're going to see Wales use like archaic tactics as you can get penalised, or that's not going to make too big an impact.
You don't need to give Alex Mann 2 invitations to cheat and block people
Yeah.
from Blair Murray to protect one of his backs.
I worry a little bit about that. I don't know how big an impact they can make, and
Yeah.
I think there is obviously something you can do, and we may see a big impact, a big improvement in that area. Clearly, it wasn't something they'd worked on in the 2 weeks they had under Tandy there, but it had a huge impact in that Argentina game.
Yeah.
And you look at Ishida against Ireland, he's very good at getting off the ground. You know, very high jump on him. Asada on the other wing had a very good game. I thought was excellent with the ball in hand. Isn't necessarily that high competitive dude, but don't know. Like still, all the same, you just need to get in his eye line, and it's so easy to drill a player to go like, just jump up and wave your arm in the air.
Yeah.
Like we do it. You do it as kids when you're playing in the playground. Like you don't need to be trained to do that in rugby to jump up and wave your arms about.
So my interesting theory on this is, so they've named Tomoki Asada at 11 and Kipe Ishida at 14. I have a feeling they might play them the other way around.
Okay.
Because Asada is a little bit taller.
Yeah.
So I think they might try and get him in the air and have Lee prefers to kick from left to right as a right-footed kicker, and so go for those crossfield bombs. I think that might be really helpful. As well as that, you have at fullback Yazaki, who is 5'11". For context, Blair Murray's 5'8", so that's an extra bit of height, a bit of an advantage they have there. So in terms of kicking off 10, I think they'll get him going after the ball quite a lot and getting Ishida to cover the backfield in his absence, or even Lee as well, to sweep across the 2 of those. So Yazaki could be in the line a lot more. As well as this, when they kick off 9, I suspect that, because Eddie's no mug, he's done this with teams he's had in the past, I think he might be sending Warner Dearns after kicks as well, as not just like the tallest player in the team by a stretch, but also he's so athletic, and if he does win those balls in the air, then if he gets a clean catch, then he's going to get over the gain line, and he doesn't really make many errors in terms of like his groundwork, in terms of his ball carry. He's never soft into a carry. So I feel like he might try and get a little bit more out of not just Warner Dearns, but also the likes of Shimakawa in the back row.
I was going to mention Shimakawa because I think one of the interesting things about the Japan team is they like to blast and counter-ruck an awful lot, right? So most of the turnovers they're winning aren't traditional jackals. You get the odd Michael Leach, who obviously is injured for this game. Michael Leach and Jack Morgan both being out is tragic for those watching. You know, and obviously it's a real shame.
It's really bad for the game, isn't it?
It's the 2 captains, 2 talismanic back row leaders. But we still have, plenty of great players in the team. Shimakawa has been slept on an awful lot. I really like him, like proper old school 7. And Japan like this blast tactic rather than necessarily going over to try and like get over the ball and like rip it clean or win a jackal turnover penalty. They like to blast through the ruck, and they use their kind of pile several forwards in at once. The other side of this is Josh Adams, right? If you hang a ball on Adams or on Reece Zammit, who's coming on the wing, and the only support behind them to clean out is Blair Murray, it's so easy for, if you've got Asada making the tackle, for Shimakawa to come over the top and blast it. And you can really target that breakdown and really disrupt that if their only backfield is Murray and potentially Dan Edwards, who also is not that big.
Yeah.
So Wales have been playing both of those in the backfield, and if they're your two furthest back players and you're hanging it on the winger, that's a real chance to attack that counter ruck there.
McKessie at number 8 as well for Japan. He's a big old unit. He's not the fastest or the most mobile number 8 you'll see, but he's a big boy, and he again was quite powerful in the carries against Wales in the summer. And again, Shimakawa's not the biggest in terms of flankers, but his centre of gravity is outstanding. And his timing in terms of the breakdown is brilliant.
The entire Japanese back row jump at the line out as well. Jack Collinson obviously, can play second row, very good there. Shimakawa's incredibly light and good at getting up in the air. So you've got a back row that can compete in the lineup. It feels a little bit like both teams have targeted the set piece a little bit of their selection. Wales have gone for Nicky Smith in over Rhys Carey and Gareth Thomas, who is the best scrummager of the lot, right? He is the best scrummager we have available by a long, long distance. And then they brought in Archie Griffin at tight head, who isn't the best scrummager, but he's probably more of a scrummager than perhaps a couple of the other options they've got there.
Asarati played really well last week against Argentina. Rhys Carey carried well.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting because these are both teams that you can look at the last 18 months of performance of and say they really lack size in the pack.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite interesting because last week that was clearly something that Tandy quite favoured, was going for Carey, going for Asarati, going for players who are big ball carriers and big presences there. This week, I think he knows he can afford to sacrifice a little bit of that to favour the set piece. I think from a Welsh perspective, to take off these Japanese hats now, that is the area where you think if Wales can get the upper hand in the scrum, which they might not, then that will give them a real head start, give them a bit of an advantage. But interestingly, Japan have swapped their props round and gone for Kobayashi and Tamafusa as their props instead, who are more known to sustain at scrum time rather than Takeuchi, who will just go after the scrum.
Yeah, who's really aggressive scrummager.
Exactly, yeah. And I think Takeuchi coming on late in the game, opposite a Rhys Carey, could be quite interesting, could change things a little bit. I don't think we're going to see just one scrum picture in this game. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those that one scrum's penalty Wales, the next one's penalty Japan, the next one's just playable, the next one is it's all over the place, it's a penalty no one or something. Like it's going to be really like chaotic, I think, at scrum time.
Yeah.
From Welsh perspective as well, line out. So last week with Adam Beard and Dav Jenkins playing 80 minutes in the second row together, the line out was just really sensible.
Yeah.
And just really like not a worry at all. And that's quite good because Australia didn't really have a functioning line out against Japan. They were quite disappointed in that area. Ireland as well didn't really get going at line-out time against Japan. I don't know if just, as I said before, like Warner Dearns is just getting in hookers' heads or something like that. But with that in mind, Adam Beard, say what you want about the rest of his game, he's a really functional line-out forward.
He's a brilliant line-out forward.
And having him and Jenkins together really works. And the line-out was kind of one of the real positives for Wales last week. And I think that's an area where they can look to target. If Japan give away penalties, they will be sacrificing ground because the line-out works for Wales.
It's something about this Steve Tandy era, right? It's clearly he is picking players who will function and win their own set-piece ball. And that is the first priority, is you win your own breakdown. Alex Mann's in the team just to clear out endless rucks. And Dav Jenkins and Adam Beard are there to win the line-out ball.
Yeah.
And likewise, the props he's picked this week are more... It feels a bit like maybe Matt Sherratt had a hand in selection the first week and wanted more ball carriers, but he's gone with, no, I want reliable scrummagers in my front row. And it was always his way with the Ospreys, right? Was he was very like, we win our set piece, everything else from there, we then decide to go. And we work that from there. The gain line is the interesting thing you mentioned there, though, that Wales having fewer carries and Ollie Cracknell comes in for his first international start, which is incredibly well-deserved.
Brilliant.
Has been really good for Leicester the last few years. And has also sorted out the thing that, when he was playing in Wales at the Ospreys, was always a very good player, but had real discipline problems. And at Tigers, he's really sorted that out. 100%. He barely concedes a penalty now. He's complete 180 on his discipline, which has been brilliant and very much what's earned him this chance, I think.
Yeah, it's mad that people, I know Leicester fans who said discipline was his strong suit when he came in for Jasper Wiese as number 8. So, yeah.
Complete 180. You rarely see a player address, the biggest problem in their game so completely.
100%. He's been brilliant.
Yeah, he's been brilliant, and he deserves a chance. But he is a proper old-school ball carrier. You give him the ball, and he goes a few inches forwards. Right?
He doesn't think about
subtlety,
what to do.
Yeah.
He just gets the ball and runs into someone.
Yeah,
it's
and
great.
goes forwards.
Yeah.
And that is really useful, because Wales need to control this game line. And Japan, without Leach and with like the back row they've picked, none of them are huge hitters. Like Shimakawa, incredible work rate, is not a guy who's going to melt his opposite number time and time again.
No, it's not Himeno.
No. And so Japan are looking clearly to contain from the team they've picked rather than to dominate the game line. And that gives Wales a bit of an edge. As you say, like there's fewer out-and-out carriers in there. Ben Thomas isn't a real carrier from 12 as well either.
No.
They could have put Joe Hawkins in. They haven't. They've gone with Thomas has remained. Steve Tandy said I thought it was an interesting line. He felt they don't have the luxury yet as a team to chop and change. They need combinations to grow first so they can then change afterwards. And I think that I can see that as a logic for keeping the two centres together and wanting to keep the second rows together as well.
Hopefully doesn't kick anyone in the head this week.
Yeah. But he said he wants to keep like second row, half-backs and locks together and grow as combinations and then down the line of chop and change here and there.
That.
And I don't mind that.
Yeah,
I think that's
enough.
I can see the logic on that and when you're trying to grow a team from scratch. However, you need a bit of like penetration there, so you're hoping Max Glenn hits more lines and his angles a bit better.
Interesting. There's a lot of those carriers are the sort who like use footwork at the line.
Yeah.
You think about Aaron Wainwright and Nicky Smith are very much those kinds of carriers.
Yeah.
So and Japan have loads of those as well. Like Shimakawa is very much one of those kinds of carriers. So it's interesting that you would imagine there'll be a lot of loose tackles and offloads in this game.
Okay, so I want to point to one thing when we're talking about the game line here.
Go on.
Which is something I've noticed about Japan in the last few weeks. There's one particular example against Ireland, but this happens quite a lot and is a bit of a problem for them because they play so fast. There is only so fast that Saito can feasibly play. And so we see all the time Lee Seung-sung, the fly half, comes in and just points where he wants them to carry, what option he wants to give. And you can see him, like this example against Ireland, right? He physically points at the carry he wants Saito to hit. Saito passes to him. The Irish defence have to line him up in time and to go, okay, we know what's coming, and smash what was previously going to be a good carry on the game line because they're playing so fast they need a second pair of eyes to come in and like manage things so that Saito's pass can he can just come in and pop the ball up, right? So that he's not having to think about it. So we see Lee Seung-sung come in and run a lot of that, and then you have to trust the likes of Charlie Lawrence and Yazaki coming in from fullback to manage shape a bit while he's coming in doing that. We do see the centres coming in and doing this job as well, but this is just one of these things that I've noticed Japan doing a little bit. I've noticed Lee Seung-sung, and obviously every fly comes in and goes like, hit a forward pod here and there. But like so much more than that, we're seeing Lee Seung-sung come in and just go, can you hit a miss pass off here? Can you hit this option off there? This is where the space is. And clearly Ireland were alert to that and able to smash them. And if Wales have noticed this as well, it's really easy. You keep your eye on the fly half, and because the 9 isn't being given time to think, isn't being given time to weigh things up.
He's not calling it. He's not opening his mouth here. He's just running and passing.
Yeah.
And 10's calling all the shots.
Yeah. So it means that there is the chance opening up to put these big shots in and line up someone like an Alex Mann who occasionally, despite not being the biggest forward in the world, loves to smoke someone, loves to fly and aggressive, use his body as kind of a missile, to line those shots up.
Okay, so there's 3 sort of little points I want to touch on here quickly. So one, do you think, quickly, the breakdown for Wales could be a potential concern with Alex Mann, who isn't usually a 7, playing in that jersey? What's your thoughts?
Yes and no. I'm not worried about Alex Mann clearing out his own ball. He's very good at that. He's very good at being clean on that. It was interesting that Tandy spoke about conversation he had about Felipe Contepomi, or with Felipe Contepomi rather. He didn't go behind his back and gossip about him.
You were offside against Scotland.
Yeah, he's also bald. Did you hear? No, he had a conversation with Felipe Contepomi afterwards where Contepomi and him talked about Wales's backfield and the issues and what Argentina targeted, which interestingly got that feedback. But also, Contepomi was incredibly full of praise about the Welsh breakdown, how much better it was than he expected.
Yeah.
And I think there's a level of this was Steve Tandy's bread and butter as a player, right? He was a proper out and out breakdown 7. And that is what he'll be drilling as a coach, now as a head coach. So I'm not that worried about Wales' breakdown on their own ball. And again, because Japan like to blast rather than jackal, but I do think it presents fewer opportunities to jackal Japan's ball and to slow it down.
I agree with that. I think as well the lack of Leach helps with that. It's blow for blow, him for Morgan, isn't it? Okay.
They're each team's best player.
Yeah, 100%.
Both missing.
And the other 2 points, I think there's one player on each team I just quickly want to talk about. For Japan, Dylan Riley. Utter baller. I was convinced he was breaking Welsh hearts in the summer when he scored that interception try off Dan Edwards dropping the ball. He is a phenomenal player, utter baller, incredibly balanced, can score from anywhere.
Yeah.
And again, he's just the sort of guy that if Japan get into their groove and attack, you can't afford to fall asleep on him for one moment.
Yeah.
And Wales, I think, are still, we're one game in, so we don't quite know what kind of defence Tandy's going to go for. If it's similar to the one against Scotland, that he did with Scotland, where it is usually about 3 to 5 steps up, are really aggressive, and then you hold off, so you can afford to sacrifice a bit of ground, that could potentially contain Dylan Riley. If they go for either a hard drift or a hard blitz, you could open up some gaps or some little opportunities for him to step people, to take people on and slip through gaps. So that's a real one to look out for this game.
Can I mention one other Japanese player?
Go on.
Ueda on the bench, who is, could be making his test debut.
Yeah.
Made his professional debut in April this year. Played the last 4 games of the Japan Rugby League 1 season, having never played 15s professional level before. Was a 7 specialist, was a great 7s player, went to the last Olympics with Japan, was very good for them there. And then has come into 15s and literally in the space of 4 games, established himself as a regular starter, ended up playing all the close season games for Toyota, his team, and was scoring tries, was looking great, was making breaks, and looks like he's taken to 15s. Eddie Jones put him immediately in the squad, and now is throwing him in after a few months of letting him cultivate and let him kind of grow as a 15s player in training. So I'm intrigued by him. Clearly he feels he's ready, but also really views him as a dangerous player. So keep an eye on him on Ueda coming off the bench.
Yeah. Eddie sometimes has these instincts about players, doesn't he?
Yazaki.
It's the same as Yazaki.
Yeah, called him up from university rugby.
Yeah. And look how good he's been for Japan. And finally, for Wales, we couldn't get through a Wales video without talking about him, but the attack around Dan Edwards and how they're going to use him. I thought it was really interesting against Argentina. We talked about how Matt Sherratt has influenced this attack. They're often using Dan Edwards in behind. Whereas in past, when they've had Sam Costello and Gareth Anscombe playing 10 for them in the Gatland 2.0 era, they would often have forwards coming off him. But instead, they're shielding Edwards a little bit. And I really like that because I think it kind of, I don't know, weirdly, this is a weird positive and kind of a bullshit point. But I kind of like the fact that I felt like there was more to see out of Dan Edwards than what we saw against Argentina. That we saw from that line break he made in the second half, and a few other moments like the lead up to the Tom Williams try, of moments where he would just come in and have these subtle touches from in behind forwards and allow everybody else to revolve around him. I think that really, really worked. And I'm really excited to see whether Sherratt opts for the same sort of attack against Japan, who pose a very different threat physically to Argentina, or whether he instead goes, we're going to tighten up and then go wide, or something like this, or whether Dan Edwards is going to ask his forwards to carry and then play off him. And it might look slightly different. I'm really intrigued.
Yeah, I was intrigued speaking to, appearing on Love of Rugby a few days ago, and Dan Cole made the point that actually Argentina's a really good game to play to prep you for playing Japan, because both are incredibly high phase count, incredibly fast, and Steve Tandy sort of backed that up by saying it is, but also it's a very different threat because Argentina, 1, they kick more.
Yeah.
But 2, you're looking an awful lot at them bringing their forwards onto the ball and so on. Japan play with such pace. He cited Takeuchi taking a quick tap, the tight head prop last year against France. He brought that up and was just like, their tight heads take quick taps.
Of course, Dan Cole
brought
that up.
Yeah. No, that was Steve Tandy.
Steve Tandy brought
that up. Yeah, brought up their tight head taking quick tap against France last year.
My apologies,
the kind of team they
Dan
were.
Cole.
Yeah. So it's also clear, right? Tandy's watched a lot of tape.
Yeah.
Right? He was citing, you could look through things when he was talking about Japan, and I was able to go oh, that happened against Canada in the PNC. Oh, that happened, last year against France. When you could see things he was mentioning. Yeah, so clearly, it's again, right? He was telling you to watch the regions. He is citing specific things that have happened in Japan tests over the last year. He is putting in more work than Gatland was. I don't want to be a dickhead about this. I don't want to make it about Gatland, but there's something nice about seeing your head coach and being oh, he's doing the work, right? He knows his shit inside out. So, look, this is a huge game.
Yeah.
What is your gut saying? Who is going to be in that second band come the World Cup?
It's horrible. It's horrible. First and foremost, when I said a minute ago we couldn't get through a Wales video without talking about him, I actually meant Warren Gatland, who just brought up there. But instinctively, I looked at the Japanese team and I had a moment of going, oh shit, that's quite a good team.
Yeah.
And then I kind of composed myself, looked at the Welsh team alongside it, and kind of went, I think Wales should win that as long as they find a way to sort out the aerial issue.
Yeah.
If they don't do that, they will give Japan easy opportunities to get into 22, take points, and win the game. And I think that, honestly, it hinges entirely on that for me.
I would compare the benches. And that Japan bench has 4 or 5 players with less than 5 caps. Yeah. You've got one player when they first debut. You've got one player who won their first cap last week. You've got another who won the first cap against South Africa a couple of weeks ago. You've got another who's making a debut.
Players.
You've got two uncapped players. Like it is.
Harry Hockings.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
He's a very good player, so he'll probably be fine.
Yeah, but like you've got a handful of players who've got 5 or 6 caps, but you've got a lot of green players. You've got a lot of players who are very used to Test rugby.
Green.
No literal Sam Green, yeah, who could have been playing but is not. Where Wales's bench, obviously it's not the most experienced they could be pulling out, right? But like you look at even the likes of Kieran Hardy coming off the bench, like who's very experienced, been around the block, box kicked
if he comes off the bench.
Yeah. But Wales have players they can deploy in an emergency.
Nick Tompkins.
Nick Tompkins, who look, easy it is to, say what you like about the chaos he brings. He still has been playing Test rugby since 2020. Like for 5 years, he's been playing Test rugby. That adds up. He's been playing for Saracens, playing pretty well at the minute, for a very sensible Saracens team. Maybe Steve Tandy can finally cook Saracens Nick to turn up rather than Wales Nick, who comes out and Pivac just broke and was like, can you just be the most chaotic man in the world? And he was like, yeah, I'd love to do that actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't bank on it.
Yeah.
Tompkins sensible this week.
Don't know. I think the Welsh bench is pretty strong.
Yeah.
So relative to the level we're on, it's not the England bench, is it? It's not the Kiwi bench, it's the South African bench. But yeah,
imagine if Wales win a game.
I know. It's been a long time. It hasn't. It's been like a few months.
It's been 2
it
games.
Feels like a long time.
We didn't have Jack for that one either.
They haven't won a game in the Principality since the World Cup warm-ups.
Bloody hell.
And before that was actually no. Hold on, because the autumn before that, because he didn't win a game in the Six Nations at home because he only beat Italy in Gatland's first Six Nations there. So a non-World Cup warm-up game, which doesn't count because they beat England there. They didn't win a game at home in the Six Nations in 2023. 2024 autumn, they lost. 2022 autumn, they lost to Georgia at home. So did they win a? Oh, they beat Argentina that autumn.
Oh yeah.
So
in Thomas Williams we trust.
So that is the only game at home Wales have won since Dan Biggar dropped that goal to beat Scotland in the 2022 Six Nations.
Bloody hell.
Which was a long time ago now.
Yeah, that was Jack Morgan's debut.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, Jack Morgan's only won 1 home game for Wales. Well, 2, because he won World Cup warm-up. But every now and again it hits you from a new angle how bleak this is, how miserable this is. No wonder no one turned up to watch it last week. No wonder there's only 50,000 people there.
Win over the Queensland Reds, you'll never sing that.